We're live. We get to do this now. Welcome to Tea and Snippets.
Welcome to Tea and Snippets. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I've got my cup of tea here in hand. What tea are you drinking this morning?
This morning I have a white petal full leaf white tea from Stephen Smith Tea Maker. Is sort of looking back on the last quarter and how we kind of got through it, and also looking ahead at what I think everyone is in the world is calling it the new normal now. So I guess we should probably call it the new normal, but kind of what the future looks like, and some lessons learned, I guess. So
yeah, it's been I feel like we've been entering into a twilight zone. On March 11th, I think everybody's world just came to a halt, and then it was there's like the personal world and the business world. Speaking in the business world, it felt like things came to a halt, only to then just really get on a rapid roller coaster ride. So I think if I take a look back, and as we're winding down Q2, I feel like where we were at entering the quarter and where we're now at exiting the quarter is like two different worlds.
yeah.
And I think, fundamentally, I think for marketing people, we've had to show and demonstrate just how flexible, just how adaptable we are to this situation, because, as most of us were on a path of, okay, what do we have to do to invest to grow? And then it became, oh no, what do we have to do to maintain and normalize and stabilize? And then think about, okay, do that. And as you're doing that, then think about, okay, is there going to be a recovery? And if so, when? And we've got to start on that now. So it was, kind of what I call like the tale of two cities, it felt like, for a little bit there.
Yeah, totally. I feel like we've all aged like years. It's like dog years the last couple of months, it seems. It feels like what we started with in April, at least especially from a demand gen perspective. Like, I run demand gen. I know and love demand gen. I love programs. I love digital. I have all these benchmarks in my brain from the last, 12 years of my career, just knowing how stuff works and generally being able to say, like, no, I think we should do it this way because I've seen this happen and it works. And all of that kind of just went out the window. And it sort of was like starting from square one as far as what budgets needed to look like and what bids needed to look like on PPC and what programs we needed to buy. Like, the mix just kind of blew up, which is sort of exciting, but also sort of overwhelming when you're talking about, like you're saying, also trying to figure out how to keep the boat sailing in the right direction, because it's not like you can just hit pause and say, let me figure this out real quick and then we'll get right back to it. You're changing the tires while the car is running. So
yeah, no doubt. And if anything, what we've learned to be is, and what we've probably tested ourselves is be super adaptable. I think it's reading the tea leaves. But this is where I would also say that if you were a data-driven organization entering into this pandemic, then data was sincerely your friend. I mean, you had to cozy up with it quite a bit, because even though the past trends weren't going to be indicative of what was going to happen in the next 6 to 8 weeks, you had at least some form of confidence in what it used to be like. Yeah. And so you could measure that against what it is, and you can see, like, there was, we could see too, in our own data, especially with what we do, right? In terms of, I guess we should just kind of say quickly what we do. We're both from Conversica. I'm the CMO, you're the head of demand gen. And what we offer are intelligent virtual assistants to our customers to help them attract, acquire, and grow customers at scale across the entire revenue lifecycle. We'll get into that a little bit later, but what's really interesting is what our customers do is they use our virtual assistants to try and qualify leads, and do so in a natural two-way conversation using an AI-powered solution. And so what was interesting to see is in March, you saw it hold steady and increase. Then you saw it pretty much hold steady in terms of the number of messages sent and the number of and the percentage of engagement of responders of those leads through April. And then you saw a dip in May. We saw a dip in May, and now we're seeing it come back up again. And so this is across a pretty large population of a customer base sending messages on a daily basis. I mean, nobody's stopping. You're still qualifying leads. You still have to try and fill pipeline. It just may not be opportunities that close sooner rather than later. But you still gotta work those leads that we're generating, and it's really interesting to see that how it was very much so on this trajectory in January, February. March started leveling off, April leveling off, May dipped, and now we're seeing it in June start to come back up again.
Yeah, and that was kind of reflected even in program spend too. It got kind of competitive, I think, toward the end of April. That was one thing that we kind of worked on trying to prepare ourselves for from a digital spend perspective, because obviously we had to take everything we were going to do for events and throw it all at digital. I mean, everybody did, and everybody did that at the exact same time. And while in a nice, friendly world, we would all just get to pay the same amount of money and just throw more money at it, and it's great, and you get more volume. Now we're all competing against each other, even more so than we were before. And so then you have to start picking. You're like, okay, which ad group or which one of these programs is going to get us the most yield? Can I just double down there and kind of avoid spending in all these other places where things are super competitive? And you're, again, doing that in real time. So while we're seeing, this kind of dip in engagement from leads, we're also seeing this increase in competition from everybody else to try to get the engagement from leads. So it was kind of a challenging May. What we did, at Conversica was kind of, obviously we moved into digital, but we also tried to do a lot of kind of trusty, tried and true type programs where we knew we could get at least volume in some of those third-party programs like content syndication and webinars. And we tried to partner up with a lot of other tech companies to do kind of, our own thing in the way of webinars, because at least that was like trusty, and then kind of keep the lights on with everything else. And now I think things are kind of starting to bounce back. Like we've seen our CPLs go back down, and I think things are maybe starting to level off. And I think also it made a lot of marketing teams, at least in tech, and just talking with some peers, kind of reevaluate priorities, as far as, you kind of didn't really think too terribly hard about where you were putting money in the way of digital spend. It was kind of just like put it everywhere and hope for the best a little bit and optimize where you can, but it just kind of always runs. And we look at it like once every other week. I think everybody has been really conscious of where that money goes and how it produces ROI and all of that. And it's kind of made everyone sort of reevaluate priorities a little bit, and get a little more particular about where they're putting their money, which has been kind of interesting too.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, you think about, if we think about where we're heading now into, into what people are calling the new normal or the next normal or whatever it may be. We know that there are certainly some new realities that we're having to face, right? It isn't like we can just go back to the way things were. I think there's going to definitely be a need for folks to recognize kind of what is our current operating procedure, what's going to be the next operating procedure for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And it's really interesting. I kind of frame it in a certain way, which I think might be useful. Can I show the framing? I think it might help. All right, let me look. So, it's really interesting when I think about this, there's kind of a couple of factors that are happening. One is we know we're going to go through economic volatility for the next at least 12 to 18 months, right? We're going to have a series of economic highs and economic lows. We're seeing that already, just even in the stock market, right? It's just really kind of doing this over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and it'll continue to do that even as as we figure out how to reopen, as business try to come back online, and you're kind of balancing that against this thing that we're going through, that we're all going through globally, which is a pandemic. But then you have to like juxtapose that against, as an organization, where were you on your digital transformation journey when this pandemic hit? Wherever you were on that journey is exactly what you're relying upon now to help survive this immediate impact. But as we start coming out of kind of survival mode and now into a recovery period, we have to be prepared for what the future will hold. And this will result in us being able, and us being marketing leaders, sales leaders, customer success leaders, those customer engagement leaders, right? Those revenue obsessed leaders, in making new digital transformation investments to adapt to the new normal, right? And that's generally, I think a lot of, there's no debating that. People understand that. And right now, now more than ever, if you weren't involved in a digital transformation initiative, you better be, right? And then you have to ask yourself though, but in today's world with all these factors coming in, how are you going to provide immediate scale and productivity to your sales team, right? Increasing that capacity on demand and that productivity on demand without breaking the bank.
Yeah.
Right? If we enter into recovery, that's going to be critical, right? The next thing you have to think about, and you're talking about, throwing the kitchen sink at digital, right? And I'm going to come back and say, what did we get out of that?
Yeah.
Right. And so you got to make every dollar invested, you've got to see that return. And that's going to be so important, and to make sure that nothing is going to waste. And the cool thing, and I think you could probably agree to this, is that you can track that a lot better through all the digital programs than you could maybe through that mix, that marketing mix we had before. And then the last bit is around retaining every dollar acquired. I can't imagine customer success teams, right? And those account managers, those who are all focused on renewals, on retention, on growth and expansion, and obviously servicing their customers. I mean, those teams, whenever you talk to those teams and their leaders, they always say that the first thing that comes out of their mouth is that they're resource strapped. On average, a customer success rep can have 50 accounts to just one of them, right? A 50-to-1 ratio. Sometimes it's 100-to-1, right? So just being able in a normal environment, being able to check the temperature and keep tabs on your customers and make sure that they're having a good experience with your products and solutions is tough. Under this umbrella, it's just absolutely daunting.
Yeah.
So how can you make sure you're still engaging with your customers in a really good way, in a timely manner, and to do it? And I'd submit that this is where digital, when you think about your digital investments, it's super important to start thinking about what new investments should we be making, so that we can do like these three critical things as revenue obsessed leaders that we are, so we could continue to accelerate revenue across the customer life cycle. And those, and regardless of the different types of technologies and solutions you can consider, you still got to think about these three factors, because they're so important right now to every organization.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned, I guess, and a shift in perspective, I guess, in the last couple of months, especially going full digital and not having these opportunities to actually sort of generate these hotter leads in real time at events, or move pipeline through the funnel with events. I don't think I realized how heavily I, even as a demand gen person, was relying on events to have those in-person conversations. And then digital kind of was like the brand awareness piece and the keep the lights on piece, and the leads that converted were cool, but whatever. And now, and so because of that, I think I relied super heavily on this lead score, the super complicated, robust lead scoring model, where I was going to hold all the leads back, and then sales can only follow up with these, like, this percentage of them. And I don't want them to touch anything until they're ready, because you'll burn them and you'll ruin everything, right? And I think now, because we don't have a chance to have these in-person conversations and cultivate these relationships in person, it's important that we get in front of these people, our leads, our prospects, even our customers, earlier, to try to cultivate that relationship virtually, essentially, after they've converted via digital. And I think there's a line, right? It's not huck over all the junk over the fence and say you did your job, but it's also, how do we not only generate good leads, but also make sure that we're giving sales the best opportunity to actually build relationships with people and like usher those people along a little faster. And maybe that lead scoring model needs some adjusting to hand more off sooner. And then you need to have the conversation with sales to say, hey, we're kind of shifting our perspective here a little bit. You're probably going to be inserted a little earlier. And so that means that your conversations have to look like this now. It's not just like slam dunk anymore. It's like you're also trying to build a relationship.
Yeah, it is. And so, well, the one thing I do know is that there's no shortage of being able to generate leads, right, in digital. It's the ability to ramp up your programs and ramp down. Yes, there's a break even point, but there is that ability to add more, to generate more, at least to a certain concept. The thing is that what's the downstream effect to that? And the downstream effect is, is that you can, you might now need to run 3-4 webinars to equal what was once, a single physical event, in terms of, you just think about purely about lead gen, like just leads, number of leads. And we know that engagement is super important. But what we also know is that anytime you had an infusion of leads coming in through the system, it would overwhelm the sales teams.
Yep.
They really wouldn't be able to keep up with that capacity. And you would see, days, sometimes weeks pass before those leads got the coverage that they needed. We also know that if those leads aren't getting followed up with in a relatively timely manner, their rate of engagement or conversion goes down dramatically. Right. And so this is one of those things where, kind of, when I think about before COVID and after COVID, well, before COVID, the answer would be, for a lot of sales teams, let's just hire more people because we've got the demand and we've got the coverage and we've got the revenue targets to go do more hiring and solve the problem with human capital. I would say after COVID, as a result of teams being frozen, even reduced, and now remote, that kind of just adding more people to the mix isn't always going to be the right answer.
Yeah.
And so this is where you got to think about new type of digital solutions to help you think through that. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I think if anything, what marketing has demonstrated over the past 10 years, it's an incredible ability to automate, to generate the leads at a scale that has pretty much overwhelmed sales in their true ability to follow up. And then you add in the other kind of realities that sales teams, traditionally do, which is, and they should do, is they're only going to focus on the ones that they think are hot or of interest, right?
Yeah.
And so you're just gonna, that divide between what's getting covered and what you're generating is only going to continue to grow.
Yeah, totally. So as a marketing leader, I guess in the next 6 months, like getting us through the rest of the year, what are your, like top 2-3 priorities for the marketing team and also just kind of like the business as a whole?
Yeah, I think number one is take the momentum that we've built as through the beginning of this year into this end of this quarter, and continue to invest in that momentum so that we can hit our targets. I mean, I think we have to still have very deep, maniacal focus on the programs we're investing in and the return that we're getting off of those programs. I think sales enablement and sales support is more important now than ever, not only from the traditional enablement, but new ways to enable too. Like, how are you helping, we're going to see that we have a number of lead / qualified opportunities that are just sitting because they can't move right now. We've got a lot of come back and talk to me later. Well, what can we do to help really kind of continue to move those, cultivate those, exercise the empathy and the patience that's needed and required to continue to push that over? And then, as I said before, we got to really be thought leaders to help people understand that just like there's a new normal, that means that there's new ways to think about the strategies and the solutions and the approaches you need to put in place to help drive forward momentum. Like I would say, that we're trying to do ourselves internally, but as I talk to other marketing leaders, is don't think, just don't try and go back to how things are. Think about what you really want to do to drive things forward, and how can I say this? Perhaps mitigate against these types of exposures in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say for demand gen, it's similar. It's the sales enablement piece, I think, is becoming more and more important for demand gen folks to kind of insert themselves with. We're generating all the leads. We care a lot about how they're followed up with. We want to make sure that everyone knows as best they can know what to do with each type of lead. So that's been one of my priorities at Conversica, is to try to work with sales a lot more closely even than I was before. And then I guess the other piece is about just kind of learning and failing fast, and then, using those learnings to get better in real time, like literally talking week to week, saying, hey, this didn't really work last week. Let's try something else this week. Versus I think before I was a little bit more willing to like let things sit for a little longer and give it a chance. It'll be fine. And that's not saying that that's wrong either, but I think that we're just in this moment in time where like everything has to come back tenfold in the way of ROI and success, and there's not a lot of time to kind of let things marinate. And so trying to do kind of big things quickly and then learn from them and move on, rather than a bunch of little things that we let sit and then kind of make decisions on later. So
totally. And I think maybe we could tee this up for another topic. It's been really interesting, and this all happened when we just happened to start an ABM program, right? And kick off our whole ABM strategy.
Yep.
And as you and I both know, ABM is a long game,
yep.
Right? And when you're going through something like this in a pandemic, you need to show short-term results, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of measure in short phases. And so it's really very contradictory in the sense that it was to kick off something that's a long-term strategy, but then being able to tell people to exercise some patience to see this thing get kicked off when everybody is making rapid decisions and pivoting, on a day-by-day basis. It was trying to balance two different, I felt like we were in two different time zones.
Well, cool. Well, cheers.
Hey, cheers.
Enjoy your English breakfast tea. I'll enjoy my bougie white petal something tea.
Something tea. I know I had to go to like the main source keg. I need to continue to infuse myself with tea here throughout the morning.
All right, cool. Well, we will talk on the next one. Hopefully everyone will join us.
All right. Hey, thanks, Amanda. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.